Okay. I guess we are live.
All right.
How's it going, guys?
Great. How are you?
We're live? Oh no.
I want to know what green you're on, Albert, today.
I actually don't know, but I think it's after Amen Corner, but this is in honor of the Masters, which, as you know,
Nice.
hopefully
Yes.
is happening right now. Really happy to see the Masters back live.
Very cool. Very
And
cool.
we do not have our guest at the moment, which
Well, we're 10 minutes ahead. So are we? Is this
Yes.
streaming right now?
Right now we are.
Oh, we are. Okay. So if anybody is watching this,
Is there anybody out there?
I know it's going to be very 10 minutes of waiting. So we had, just to be clear, we had to go live because Facebook, what was that?
forced us to. Yeah. Otherwise, they're going to cancel it.
So in the future, we probably have to do that earlier, right? Like set the time earlier so we don't have to do this.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we can banter.
Yeah. I mean, just think of it this way. This is a test drive for all of you that are watching us right now that are, thinking of doing your next Facebook Live session. Just so you know, 10 minutes earlier, you got to get on.
So you're not
For
forced
public service.
to do jokes. So I have some good banter. I have some good
Okay.
banter. Fodder.
Hey, by the way, before you banter, since anybody that's tuned in now, which, hopefully is like nobody, but, you get to see the operator, Pedro.
Yay,
Pointing
Pedro.
right
It's
way.
the man that makes it happen.
That's right.
I try my best.
Yeah.
I've
And Pedro's
gotten good
also
at-
the guy that's been writing all the millennial posts.
Yeah. My post on the consumer price index took some heat from some of my finance buddies,
I bet
but it was
did.
good. Yeah. Oh yeah.
But they haven't commented though,
Yeah, I know. I told every single one of them to comment, but I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying doing the deep dives into finance.
Yep. We need to find
Very
some
cool.
Gen Z people. I've
Oh,
decided.
Gen Z.
My sister's 19, so
Okay.
I can see if she has some Facebook friends who can get involved.
Who want to get involved with something like that?
Yeah.
Anyway, all right, Albert, what's your banter while we're waiting for our
Oh,
guest?
sorry.
No, it's not banter. It's a thought I had. So it was weird. Like the last, I would say 2-3 weeks, I've gotten a lot of calls for some reason, like a lot of calls trying to get me back into the startup scene. and it's like this, I'm kind of out of it. I mean, I obviously love startups. I love doing this, stuff like this, but actually like getting back into it is like a whole different thing, right? So anyway, that's the prelude. And so I was having a conversation with this VC. And if you guys know, VCs are like, everybody wants to be a VC, right? Everybody wants to be Lynette. I mean,
Everybody
Lynette,
wants to be
Yeah,
Lynette.
totally. Everybody just wants to be Lynette because it's not about being
there
a VC.
you go.
Yeah.
But everybody like loves VCs. Everybody wants to be a VC. Like, it's like this incredibly sexy job. Hey, Emir.
Hey guys.
We were just filling up space, but I'll finish really quickly with I was posing a question to everyone.
Go for it.
So this conversation with the VC, and I was like, look, what startups want, they don't want empathy, they want clarity, is what I said, right? I was like, they don't want VCs to be like, oh, so sorry I can't invest in you, or, oh, we love you, we love your service, we love all your people. What they just want is like, they know that VCs are a business and that, they don't have to be startups. Just give me the money. And like, you are like there to pass money from somebody to me, right? And like, that's and startups are like cool, like understand that, I think most. So the question I had was like, you know, why are you trying to be nice to startups? Like, if anything, you should just be like clear to them. Just be like, look, we're not going to invest in you right now.
Yeah.
We don't put any money in. Like, and being nice, I think what I was saying was being nice is kind of cruel. Like, what to lead them on? Why lead them on? Just tell them, you know, be straight up.
I think that's really good perspective. That's good feedback, or that's a good insight, Albert. And I think it's really interesting, you know, that's an interesting perspective, because I know that I sort of straddle this world of VC in the industry, right? From, you know, the scale up program perspective, but that's really the position that we come at this from. Like, we feel that everybody that sticks their neck out there as an entrepreneur and is creating something and is in market has a good kick at it. But there's a couple of things, right? It's about timing is a big thing. So not everybody is ready at the particular time they're asking, number one. But we always take that opportunity, whether we have interest in working with a company or not, to provide feedback, because, you know, our lens is feedback is a gift, right? And there's lots of factors around why a VC won't invest in the company. It's not necessarily because they're not great. It's timing. It's, you know, does it work with the thesis? It's, you know, kind of where are they in their raise? Does it fit in terms of the diversification of the portfolio they want? I mean, there's a ton of stuff, right? But I think it's really good perspective for the community to be like, you know, it's great to support, but support is real. It's like your parents, right? You want your parents to be really upfront and honest with you about, you know, what you need to do to grow up kind of thing, right? So I love it.
Yeah.
All right.
Sorry
since
about
we
that.
are live and Emir is here.
Emir, we're
let's
live
get
right now.
going.
You're like
Killing time.
live. You know, we have like 2 people watching probably, but
Hey, it's all good.
Yeah.
Just to chime in on that conversation. I know I jumped in a little late, but you know, we really don't need, as a startup founder, somebody who's raised capital, has gotten plenty of rejection emails from venture capitalists. We would rather you be frank and tell us why. And you know, any kind of words of support is great, but I would rather kind of get the data from you on why you passed, and so I can put that in my list and something to consider. Now, I'm gonna think about it. I'm gonna take it to heart. I'm not going to necessarily execute upon it based on what my vision is and what I'm trying to accomplish for the company. But I definitely want that feedback, and I want the data. And yeah, I mean, that's incredibly helpful for us. The worst is when somebody expresses interest and then ghosts you and doesn't respond at all. That's the worst. Just say no, and it's okay. I don't take it personal. I don't think many founders do. But when you kind of leave it open-ended, with a maybe or no response, that's just the worst.
crazy. That's crazy. That's so unprofessional.
As
Ghosting
Pedro,
is
our
for online
operator,
dating. It's not for freaking.
I was gonna say, as Pedro, our operator, knows, like, that also works in dating and relationships.
Anything.
Just say no.
Right. Yeah, I mean, raising capital is dating, really.
Yeah,
I mean, you have to find the right partner that is gonna be able to stick with you through thick and thin and provide you the resources that you need to kind of survive. So, it's very correlated.
All right.
All right.
I think we lost Emir for a second there.
Is he back?
Hopefully.
We'll wait on it.
Yeah.
Maybe we could do a whole other show on just like, there's so many shows on fundraising and VCs and startups and stuff like that, but
it would be fun, you know. It'd be fun. I would love to find like some sort of.
Oh, he's back. Here's that.
Did I lose you guys? I didn't know.
Yeah.
Okay. No, you're back.
Okay.
All right. So, just let's get started.
Should we run the intro again?
I was just saying, my name's Rob. You want to run the intro again?
The intro screen, I mean, the screens. I don't think we should.
Sure. I mean, we're already live, but sure, whatever. Let's do it. So we know if I edit it. Okay, here we go. Yeah, look at us.
There we are.
Lynette looks closest to like real life.
Closest to real life. Does that mean it's because I'm the one that's had the picture taken the most recently?
Is that what it is?
I think so. So hey, welcome to the Blueprint Sessions, Emir.
Yeah.
I'm Rob Hahn, 7DS Associates. Over there, I don't know which direction to point at this setup, but that's Albert, and over there is Lynette. So
Hey guys,
Hello.
thank you for having me on. Excited and great to meet everyone. I know we connected quickly on LinkedIn prior, but it's an honor to be here. Excited. Thank you.
yeah. So the way that we do these things is we know very little about you on purpose because the whole point of this is to help you kind of tell your story. And then we're just going to chime in and kind of give our feedback. I guess in way of introduction wise, I'm an industry consultant, so I know a whole lot about real estate industry. Albert, do you want to just one sentence?
Yeah, I'm a former startup. It was on the screen, but I'm a former
Yeah.
startup founder, and I also was head of Google for startups in Korea for a little bit. So I'm a startup person. I know nothing about real estate.
That's right.
I've learned so much actually just doing this, but yeah,
And then Lynette?
I'm like I straddle both worlds. So I was in the industry for, I don't know, 10, 12 years, and now I work expressly with startups and help them scale and grow. So
She's the VC on our panel, so
Yep.
everybody wants to be her.
VC.
everybody wants to be Lynette.
So that's kind of
Love
our
it.
take, man. That's our whole approach. This is just a friendly, long conversation. So let's just start. Like, what is Rabbu?
Yeah, so we are an I'm happy to jump into it. We're an asset management platform. So we partner with real estate investors primarily. We start out kind of mom and pop investors, people that had a couple of properties, and have started graduating to more institutional real estate developers, large real estate funds, groups of that nature. And what we do is we partner with them to look at their assets and say, could you better utilize this asset as a non-traditional rental type? So usually when a real estate investor acquires a piece of property, a piece of real estate, they have a single rental strategy in mind for that property. It's usually long-term rentals. What we do is we go and partner with those groups and say, well, you can make X amount as a long-term rental. We can help you make Y or Z, usually a higher amount, if you turn that property into a short-term rental or a medium-term rental. So first step is we always help you educate on the revenue opportunity if you were to take a piece of real estate and put it under a different rental strategy. And then we help you execute on that strategy itself, either through a direct management services or by allowing you to license our tech suite to manage it yourself. So we enable propcos to explore new types of rental strategies, primarily short and medium-term rentals. And then we can be their opco, or we can provide their opco with the technology to execute on those strategies.
Okay, so you're in the property management space.
Correct.
Okay.
Alternative property management, non-traditional property management.
I guess I'll just start. Like, what in God's name made you want to do this?
Hang on,
What
before
maybe-
you
Yeah.
start there, have you read Amir's LinkedIn profile?
I have not.
Oh, well, if you want to be,
Let's start there. Okay, let's start there.
Okay.
Lynette.
let's start there. I think it's a great place to start because then I would love to hear what made him get into this space, because I feel like there's a trajectory there, Emir. I don't want to make any assumptions, but let's start there.
I'm happy. A little bit of my background. So I was born in Bosnia, ex-Yugoslavia, in '86, and when I was 6 years old, a civil war broke out in ex-Yugoslavia, and the city that I lived in Bosnia, in a little kind of village on the outskirts of Bosnia, right at the border of Bosnia and Serbia, called Bijeljina, is the first city where the civil war broke out. So when I was 6, my family and I were forced to flee the country, and we fled to Germany. So we lived in Germany for 6 years on a temporary visa, and then we're lucky enough to get sponsored and to move to the United States. So we moved to the United States in '98, moved to a small town in North Carolina. Town is Lexington, North Carolina. It's about 40,000 people population of the town. And, that was, first of all, that was a culture shock for me. If you can imagine, I lived in a city in Germany that was probably 200,000 or 300,000 people. And everything I knew about the States was what I'd seen on TV. So New York, LA, Chicago, Miami, all the glitz and the glamour and the sexiness, right? And then we get off the plane in this small regional airport in Greensboro, North Carolina, and we drive down to Lexington, which is where we were staying when we first moved to the States. And that was a culture shock beyond belief. I was expecting to be surrounded by high rises, yet I was in a great little city, don't get me wrong, but the tallest building was like 5 or 6 stories. There was pig statues everywhere. and I was raised Muslim, so I was like, okay, what is going on here, right? So that was a little bit of a culture shock. So yeah, I'm an immigrant 2 times over. First from Bosnia to Germany, and then from Germany here to the States, and ended up moving to Charlotte, North Carolina for school. Went to Charlotte, University of North Carolina at Charlotte to get a civil engineering degree. And did the engineering thing for a handful of years after graduating. So I actually graduated in 2008, which was the worst time to graduate in the engineering world, civil engineering world, obviously the housing crisis. When I started school, at first, they told us, my freshman orientation in engineering, they told us, look around, there's going to be 2 things we're going to promise you. Half the people that are in this room, if you won't graduate, and you'll never have to worry about a job because you're an engineer. Well, fast forward 4 years, I graduated in 4 years, but there was no jobs to be had. So I started kind of jumping. I hassled my way into jobs. I would see companies that are coming to career fairs. I'll reach out to them ahead of time. I was eventually able to land a couple of engineering jobs, and just didn't enjoy those jobs. I mean, I could kind of see a pretty flat career path. I was imagining myself, 60 years old, 400 pounds, bald, and just completely unhappy, right? And just, it wasn't, having come from the background I came from, having seen my parents sacrifice so much to first, escape a war, get my sister and myself to Germany, and then do the same thing again, start over from scratch. Again, when moving to the States, honestly, I got depressed. It's just like I wasn't happy with what I was doing. I was just not in a good mental state. And as a result, I actually decided to quit engineering, and I joined a local startup in Charlotte called Kick, KYCK. It was a soccer technology platform that was started by a local entrepreneur. Actually started there as a free intern. I just wanted to get my feet wet. I wanted to get into the space. So I started as a free intern, was eventually brought on to be a business analyst, and was just driven. So I kept doing a really good job and kept asking for more responsibility, and ended up being the VP of operations of that company when it got acquired by NBC Sports. That's kind of the background to that. And I think the one thing, Lynette, you might have been alluding to, I did unfortunately have to face, when first starting at Kick, I did have cancer, testicular cancer. And, it's another one of those things that just kind of gave me the push that put things into perspective, just gave me a push to not take anything for granted and just to fight and just make things happen. So that's one of the reasons why I think I'm an entrepreneur, is seeing what my parents went through, and realizing that I don't want to take anything for granted, and then realizing how short life could be when I had the cancer, and decided pushing through that and building off of that, really.
Oh wow. Oh wow, that is inspirational. Hopefully, are you in full remission? Are you okay now?
Full remission, 5 years, I think 6 or 7. I don't honestly remember.
Awesome.
I kind of put it in the
That's
back of my mind. Not, I don't think about it. But it was honestly, like, it was a building block. It just, sometimes you need excuse my language, but a kick in the ass. And life will give that to you. So.
Kicking the ass doesn't account for
that. That's some ass kissing, ass kicking before you get cancer. You don't need to ask for that ass kicking. That's fucking amazing. There's no that's fucking amazing. So I actually wanted to real quickly jump in about the immigrant thing, because Rob and I are both also immigrants. Like, totally, I could hear that. Like, I'm like, oh my God, I know exactly what he's talking about.
Yep.
This is an interesting question, because there's a lot of immigrants in startups, actually. There's a lot of entrepreneurs doing startups. Immigrants doing entrepreneurship, and of course, tech startups as well. I mean, is there something there, you think, that, besides the kind of parents and sacrificing, is there something there, you think, in the immigrant experience that kind of, drives you or drove you towards startups? Anything particular in that experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's because you grow up in a non-traditional life and you look at things non-traditionally, right? You talk about the American dream is, I'm raising my 3 kids in the American dream, right? You grow up, you go to school, you go to, elementary school, middle school, high school, go to college, get a job. And it's just like a very, society in a sense here in the United States, really everywhere, but society in a sense has it's created a path for you, and you just kind of stay in that path, right? But as an immigrant, you're taken out of that path very early, and you're jumping back and forth.
Kind of at the
places.
margin. Yeah, you're kind of at the
Right.
margin looking. Yeah.
Exactly right. So you're not focused on that path. You're focused on surviving, right, and figuring out how to make the best out of every situation. So I think it's just, in a sense, it's programming that you go through as you're kind of growing up. You're not in a straight path. You're all over the place. So that allows your mind to think through, other opportunities. Honestly, I wonder when I'm talking to other founders, CEOs, other people in startup world. I always wonder, it's like, what happened to you in your life for you to do this crazy stuff that we're doing, right? Like, because it's not, in a sense, honestly, it's not normal to expose yourself to some of the stuff that we expose ourselves to. I always wonder, it's like, oh, what traumatic experience have you had? Did you go through to make you to get to that point? And I really I respect everyone who even attempts to do this, much less is successful at it.
Yeah, for sure.
Totally.
All right. So
Totally.
with that background, I guess now I'm sort of going, okay, you've gotten some ass kicking, you've had some success. The Kick was sold to NBC Sports. You could have done a million things, man. You're obviously a very talented, very smart, very driven guy. Why'd you pick this one?
Yeah, it's an interesting story. So my mindset when Kick got acquired was NBC was acquiring us. Initially, I wasn't going to join NBC, but they made me an offer I couldn't refuse. So I ended up joining NBC. But the whole time, my mindset was, okay, this is a step for the next chapter for me. I'm going to utilize this opportunity while working at NBC remotely to figure out what I wanted to do next. And I started playing around with multiple business ideas. Transparently speaking, one of them was a drone media company that we started and played around with. I'm not a big let me create a business plan and have a clear business plan and go execute upon that business plan. I'm like, okay, I see something here. Let me take a step and see how far the step will take me, right? So the way we got started in this space, my wife and I purchased a home in Charlotte that had a detached garage and a room above that garage and a bathroom. And being a guy, it's like, okay, perfect. This is going to be my man cave. This is where I'm going to hang out. But at that point, I had two little ones, I think a 6-month-old and a 2-year-old. And the idea of me being a separate dwelling, in my man cave while my wife and the kids were in, the primary house, it's just, one, wasn't fair to her, and it just was not going to be healthy for our marriage. So, being an entrepreneur, I was like, okay, what should I do with this space? We thought about potentially, because we were dealing with childcare issues too, like trying to figure out how to take care of our kids. We thought about maybe getting an au pair that would stay over there that could watch our kids. We played around with ideas, and then one day we said, hey, let's just make it an Airbnb, and maybe we'll make some discretionary income off this property, and it'll be some travel money because we love to travel. We'll make money off this Airbnbs, and we can invest into another Airbnb that we want to stay at when we go travel the world. So that was the initial idea, and so we went and set up that Airbnb, started and put it on, and started marketing it on the site. And next thing we know, this 200 square foot room above our garage is paying the mortgage on our house. So this additional dwelling above our garage is paying the mortgage on our house. We're like, oh wow, okay, this is more than we were anticipating. Maybe we should do more of this. That's really kind of how it started. We lived it. We saw the returns and then said, okay, let's see if we can do more of this. It's how it really started initially.
Okay, so did you end up buying more properties? What happened?
Yeah. So at that point, we're like, okay, let's get more properties. So our initial thought was to go out and buy properties. So this was all in Charlotte, North Carolina, and the real estate market in Charlotte has been relatively hot for a while. So we started looking at properties, and we put in a couple offers in. We would get outbid. We just couldn't find the right spot at first. So, I want, again, entrepreneur, trying to hustle, trying to be creative. I started thinking, okay, well, if it's going to take me forever to build a portfolio of homes that I manage myself. And really, prior to that, the only real estate I'd done was purchasing my own properties, purchasing a first home. And then this was our second home that I mentioned earlier. So I wasn't a real estate investor, didn't know as much about real estate as I do now at that point. So instead of buying homes, we decided to go the route of, okay, maybe we can arbitrage rental properties. So we started reaching out to property investors or property landlords who had homes available for rent on Zillow, Craigslist, or wherever. And we basically said, hey, we'll offer to pay you a premium for that property. We'll pay you 10% more than what you're looking for, as long as you're okay with us then turning that into a short-term rental. So that was kind of like our case studies. Okay, let's go get a few more properties through a rental arbitrage, and let's see if we can cover the liabilities that we've just taken on, which is the leases and the furniture to furnish the spaces. Let's see if we can cover those liabilities and turn a profit from these properties. So we did that with 5 properties. Within 3 months, we were able to add 3 additional properties in this rental arbitrage master lease model.
Nice.
So that was the first step.
Very cool. So, and when you say we, is this you and your wife, Emir, that are kind of just taking this risk on yourselves at this point? And it's really just about, and at this point, it's still really about how do we continue to create value, right? Create cash flow out of some relatively low investment. Right. Okay. So
exactly right.
So then what took it to, what was the next step that led to let's create a technology startup or a startup that really allows us to kind of put this on steroids? And I mean, and the reason, and kind of frame that question against, like, anybody could do this really, right? And so what was your kind of edge? What was the secret sauce that you guys had figured out that you thought you had a real business proposition here?
Yeah, absolutely. Great point. I mean, what I was doing at that point was really more of like a side hustle, less of a business.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And it was with my wife, and she was kind of the original co-founder. Eventually, we pulled her out of the business. But, I got to about 5 properties doing this model, and I realized that I was running a geographically dispersed hotel, and that if we wanted to build any scale out of this, at first we wanted to build like our own hospitality brand through short-term rentals. Anytime you stayed at a Rabbu property, you would have the same experience at that property, because Airbnb was still kind of at the infancy stages. This was before the Saunders and some of the larger groups. It was still at the infancy stage. So we were thinking, okay, let's build a brand out of this. Let's build a hospitality brand of branded Rabbu homes. But we kept running into the scalable operational issue. So I brought on my true co-founder, James Strong, who's a full stack developer. And I said, hey, James, this is what I'm working on. For context, James had been with me at Kick prior to the NBC acquisition. So I said, he was the head of development there. So I said, James, can you help me develop the backend operations to allow this to scale itself, right? Can you help me build the technology and figure out what we need to do from a scalability perspective so that this is more passive and less reactive? Because anytime you have real estate, you want it to be passive. So I brought James on to do that. And we're still thinking that we're going to do this for ourselves, right? We're going to have our own portfolio of homes. But then as we started talking about the space itself and started reaching out to investors to lease their homes, they started coming back to us and saying, hey, I don't want you to just lease the home. I want to partake in this. I want to take some of the upside of these rentals. Can you guys tell me how much my property can make? And then can you guys turn this into a passive income stream for me? We don't want you to take on the rental liability, the leases. Can you just charge us a management fee? We're like, oh, okay. So you're going to pay the mortgage, you're going to pay for the furnishings, and we have to educate you on what the rental potential is and then execute on the actual operating. So we stopped doing the leases and we really started building more of a investment platform, right? So we started understanding what investors were looking for, and we started building our operations and our technology around their needs versus our internal needs. So it shifted from our own master lease properties, arbitrage properties, to technology that helps us first help property investors identify what the best property is, and then technology that can help from an operational perspective to get them on the right marketing channels, to automate the guest communication, the payments, anything associated with actually running a short-term rental.
Amazing. Can I just ask one more quick question before?
Of course.
Rabbu, tell us about the genesis of the name Rabbu and what it means, or what the intent, what the meaning is.
The fake story is that it stands for really awesome bed and breakfast units, Rabbu. The true story is that while I was at Kick, I was trying to figure out, I was just entrepreneur. I was doing things on the side, trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. And I spent time on GoDaddy domain auctions just to see if there's any cool domains that would become available, right? So I would just like once a day, just scroll through some domain auctions, see if there's any interesting names. And Rabbu.com became available, and it sounded like a word. I could buy it for $50, a 5-letter domain for $50. It's like, okay, well, let me just buy it and pocket it, and if it ever makes sense, we'll do it. And then as we were starting this business, I was talking to James, my co-founder, about what we wanted to name it. I was like, hey, I have all these domains that I've stored. Any of them make sense? He's like, well, if you look at Rabbu, if you turn the A, and this was original logo, if you turn the A into a house, it looks like a rental property. So let's just go with that. I'm like, cool. And then over time, people started trying to ask us the same question. So we started to think what Rabbu is, and one of our team members said, oh, really awesome bed and breakfast unit. So that's the fake story. The true story is it was just, we bought it off a domain auction on GoDaddy.com.
Hey, look at whatever it creates a conversation, which is really
exactly
what you
right.
want as an entrepreneur, is just something to create conversation. So good on you guys. Cool.
Yeah, exactly right.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna restate what you explained about the business, and then you tell me if I'm right. So it's basically management, right? It's basically property management, and it's like a B2B essentially, right? We're not really looking at individual. We're looking at people who have a lot of property, or management companies, right, that are already managing. It seems like, and so you guys say, hey, here's a better way to do it. I'm gonna make you more money, right? So that's what it seems like to me. So I have two questions. The first is, so what are the margins we're talking about, right? Like, is it much better? What on average, what are we talking about that you gain? The second question I have is, and you were starting to get to some of like what makes you guys special, but what, is it, if I were to do property management, right, and try to be smart about like managing an Airbnb, like how is using your service better than just me hiring somebody who's like really smart and really friendly and really nice to the guests and so forth? So what can you get at those two things?
Yeah, absolutely. So, on the real estate side, on how much additional revenue you can make with a short-term or a medium-term rental, and I can kind of talk about the differences between those two because they are distinct, and really COVID has accelerated some of that distinction. But the margins are anywhere from 40 to 80% more at the right property than you can make off a traditional long-term rental. So, if a traditional long-term will make you $1,500, the right short-term rental can make you $2,200 to $2,500 in net operating income. So there's a significant upside potential there. So that's kind of the first part of the question. The second part, what makes us really unique, is that we are a technology company. We have property management services, but the property management services have a technology company tied to it. So if you were to start a short-term rental company right now yourself, you would have to utilize probably close to a dozen of third-party apps to really execute this appropriately, and to have any kind of good both internal operations and external guest experience. And what we've done is, by running the property management business right next to the technology business, we've seen what problems that the property management business has, and we've built technology to solve those problems. So somebody who would want to work with us is they would come to us and say, hey, you guys you can solve all this for us. Take care of it. Now, if you want to operate short-term rentals yourself, and you don't want to use our services, we can give you the full tech suite that we've built from knowing the problem ourselves. You can utilize it yourself and do so without having to put together, a dozen different disconnected, really, third-party solutions to be able to do so effectively. And overall, we people on our platform outperform average short-term rentals by about 30% as well. So, we can build higher margin and more revenue for them because we can get on all the marketplaces. We know how to execute the leases, how to attract the proper tenants.
Okay, so awesome. So this is all your own proprietary software. You're not just plugging in like third-party type things, right?
Correct. Correct,
Okay.
correct. We started off with plugging in third-party things, and then started building on top of them, and then replacing them. So we started off on a property
Sure.
management system. We replaced that. We have our own kind of an IoT smart home device platform that we partner with Samsung and their SmartThings ecosystem on. We have our own accounting platform that does trust accounting. We have our own tenant verification, lease signing. All that is kind of done internally with our tech suite that our team has built. And long term, the vision for us is to create a full platform and really focus on selling the technology much more so than we are now than the direct services. But it's one of those evolutionary steps that just takes a while.
So that actually answered my question. I was curious, on your website you talk about monitoring properties 24/7, access control, things that like a normal just software doesn't do. So it sounds like you're actually building hardware to some extent, or you're taking Samsung hardware and installing it, or
yeah, exactly right. Yeah, absolutely, Rob. So we've partnered with Samsung, and Samsung has their SmartThings ecosystem that has about 400 different pieces of hardware that it's compatible with. So we were actually one of the first groups that has access to their API, and we were featured during their developer conference a few years back. But what we do, any property that's on our platform, we ask them to install at least a smart lock and a Samsung hub. And the smart locks are really, locks that you can buy off the shelf at like a Home Depot or an Amazon. They're Yale, ASABLOY, Kwikset, smart locks that you have everywhere. And then by connecting that to our technology, we can then set duration-based access codes for the properties for the tenant. Once they make their reservation, once they pay, once we verify their identity, we set a code that works only for them for their duration of the stay. And once their stay expires, that code stops working. So it's a big kind of on-the-ground property management issue that we solve through technology. But then if the owners want to invest into more technology, for example, a smart thermostat, water leak sensors, security system, we can automate all those things based on the data that we have on the reservations themselves. So, if a unit is vacant and there's a smart thermostat installed, we can set the thermostat to go in eco mode, so you're not cooling or heating an empty space, which again drives yield for the investor because it reduces your operating cost. So we can do a lot of these things with that technology that we've built internally to really make this, a high yield asset strategy.
Emir, who's your ideal customer?
Our ideal customer, yeah, it's really real estate investors. So anybody from 2 to 5 properties, which is how kind of when we started, somebody who's buying their first investment property, to now we're starting to work with some real estate multifamily developers, some single family REITs, a lot of real estate focused family offices, some built to rent developers as well, real estate developers. So it's really anybody who has habitable space. Most recently, we actually started working with a family office on converting a hotel into an Airbnb property here in Miami Beach. So we're really any habitable space that can be optimized, our technology can solve for.
Interesting.
Sorry, can I just ask one more question there? So then in terms of, that's your ideal customer, and because you have the operating component, are you currently only operating, did I see this somewhere, maybe on your LinkedIn profile, only in North Carolina? Where are you currently available?
Yeah, we are available for direct operations right now. So we're in North Carolina, Virginia, Tennessee, Texas, Florida, and South Carolina. That's just where we have a foothold right now with our own properties. We have people all over the country licensing our technology for different needs. And we can expand into really any market very quickly. Just depends on finding the right partner. A lot of the markets, for example, in Texas and in Tennessee and Virginia, we don't have any team members on the ground. We are there during the onboarding process, and then we have third-party vendors that we partner with to execute things like cleaning and maintenance. But besides that, everything can be automated through the technology.
So if I'm a property owner and I choose to operate on myself, I could license your technology.
Correct.
Cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm good with this.
Yeah. So, this is normally I'd be asking about like team and all this stuff, but I'm actually fascinated about the business. So it seems like to me one of the key, again, this is me not knowing jack about property management, but it seems like there's a front end aspect and a back end aspect. So the front end meaning getting the customers, doing the marketing, making right, and then the back end like doing all the management, making sure they come in. And you've touched on a lot of back end stuff, which seems cool. But it seems like to me, a property owner is going to be really interested in like, how do we make sure there are no vacancies, right? How do we make sure that there's constantly people in here? Because that's the biggest pain in the ass, like when you think about it from their perspective. So what do you guys do special on the front end, or do you do that? Like, you know, are you kind of managing that whole, you know, circus, right? Like it's like herding cats, I can imagine.
Yeah, I mean, so because we have our own property management system, we're able to take these properties that we have on our portfolio, we put them on our property management system, and then we distribute it to all the marketplaces. So our property management system is kind of the owns the calendar, right? Sets the availability, sets the pricing for these properties, and then from there it distributes it out onto, you know, Airbnb, VRBO, Zillow, Expedia, Nestpick, onto 30 different marketplaces, including our direct marketplace, or if a partner wants their own direct website, we can put it on their direct website as well. And so we concurrently market those properties across 30 different marketplaces, and sometimes even with different rental strategies. So, you know, on Airbnb, our marketing will be focused on shorter stay, 2 to 3 day stays. But on different marketplaces like a Zillow or a Nestpick or direct, we'll focus on trying to find 30 plus day tenants. So we really allow the properties to, one, to be marketed on multiple marketplaces, and two, also to be marketed under multiple strategies, you know, short term and medium term, to reduce the risk to the property investor of, you know, having it sit vacant. So, you know, traditionally when you have a property, just like a long-term rentals, and hopefully this works out, we diversify that. And that's actually reduces some of the risk and increases yield potential.
Got you. So just as an add-on question real quick, do you have any data like to say, you know, if you run it through us, we have better vacancy like rates than if you were to do it alone, or if you were to do it, you know what I mean? Like, is there any kind of way to get purchase on that?
Yeah, I mean, so we actually just ran some numbers earlier today as part of our revenue management strategy. So right now, if you were to rent it on your own as a short-term rental, we outperform the market by 30%. So we make you more as a short-term rental, 30% more than you would by yourself. And then on the long-term rental side, we do have some market comps that we send to the owners every month. And we actually just debuted a new tool online. It's basically our Zestimate, where you type in you give us an address and your bedroom count, and within half a second, we can give you an estimate how much money your property can make as a short-term rental, and we'll give you the comps for that property. So we have that live in 13 states right now, primarily in the Southeast, and, you know, some of the larger states like California and Illinois and New York. But we try to educate. That's really kind of our biggest hurdle, is the education on the client side, helping them understand that how much money they can make if they were to utilize this strategy instead of their traditional long-term rental strategy. So we try to provide them that data on the front end quite often, or as much as possible, really.
Awesome.
I have so many questions, but I'm going to try and keep it to the easy ones and go from there.
I'll take hard ones too. Yeah.
No, we'll get there. Believe me.
Okay,
you know,
great.
The easy ones are stuff like, number one, like, do you know Joshua Dorkin and the guys over at Bigger Pockets?
We've done some work with Bigger Pockets before. We've sponsored their conferences. We sponsored their kind of Bigger Pockets conference in Nashville a few years ago. Yeah, we know them.
Because that's like the perfect audience for, you know, what you're wanting to do. Second question is, it seems obvious again. Do you talk about, you know, you have this sort of portfolio management aspect, like watch your portfolio grow, right? You could just check. Are you also taking all of the expense side into that? Because you mentioned you have your own accounting package, right? So how are you doing that?
Just so I'm answering the right question, Rob, are you talking about during the initial kind of underwriting process of understanding the goal or the strategy utilized? Or are you talking about at the back end when we're paying out the investor?
So ongoing. So like, okay, so Airbnb. So let's just use that as an example.
Right.
Short-term rentals for now. I'm doing 2 days, 3 days, whatever. But
Right.
it's like after each stay, I gotta pay somebody to come in and clean the place.
Yep.
The water heater went out. I have to replace the water heater.
Right.
There's expenses, the property taxes, the mortgage payments, whatever else. Like, is the homeowner entering all of that? Are you guys automating that? It's like talking
Yeah.
about that side
So
of things.
so we automate anything related to the direct operation of the unit. So things like maintenance, cleaning, supplies necessary. We do pass the kind of the mortgage and the property taxes and some of the utility payments. Like, that's a responsibility that the owners take in. We can cover that too, but we don't have that fully fleshed out yet.
No,
Transparently
I don't mean
speaking.
cover like pay for it. I mean like just the data.
Yeah,
just
yeah.
entering that info.
Yeah. So we don't. That's what I meant. We don't have that fully baked in yet. It's part of our kind of. We have a product internally called Portfolio, which is where the investor is able to enter their information. That's part of the roadmap. We're just not there yet. And I think you're getting at to really understand the NOI and the rental analysis and
That's
the
right.
true yield. We're working towards that. It's not there yet, but we're close.
Because the second part of that is once you have the NOI, once you have all of that, right, you should be able to actually let the owner know now is a good time for you to sell,
Mhm.
right? Or now is a good time for you to do a 1031 exchange.
Yeah.
Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like,
100%.
have you got, so is that sort of on your roadmap somewhere?
It is. I mean, there's. I love that. Yes. I mean, we kind of right now we help with the procurement, we help with the management. Eventually, you want to have help with the selling as well. Kind of create the whole kind of wheel effect, right? That's definitely something that we've been thinking about, that we're planning for. Transparently speaking, we also think there's an opportunity for us on the initial transaction side when a lot of times investors acquire properties based on our numbers, our recommendations. Right now, we don't make anything on that transaction. I think there's an opportunity there as well for us to capture a piece of the transaction because we act as almost an agent in educating them on the revenue opportunity. That's a little bit further down the line, similar to what like a roof stock does. But yes, I mean, right now we've kind of focused on the hardest part, which is on executing on the model, which very few people can do at scale, especially with their own technology. We focused on that, and then we'll add those more opportunity on the transaction side, on both the procurement side and eventually the selling side as well.
So related to that, I know you guys have your own, I don't know what to call it. We'll call it owned operations, meaning you're a property management operation in at least North Carolina, Virginia, Tennessee, Texas, Florida, South Carolina, right?
Correct.
Okay, so let's say I'm a broker. Let's say I'm an agent in one of those markets, right? And I go to you and I say, listen, I want to create a turnkey property management solution for my clients, for my investor clients, right? Is that something you guys could deliver?
When you say turnkey, can you I just want to make sure I'm answering the question appropriately, Rob. When you say turnkey, like tell the investor what to buy and then capture the revenue for him? Or are you saying,
so let's have a client says, hey, I'm thinking about buying some investment property in Hilton Head, right?
Yep.
It's a popular vacation spot.
Right.
I say, sure, here's the wonderful 2-bedroom condo right on the beach. You should buy it, and I'm going to be your buyer's agent, right? But the investor says, but here's the thing. I live in New York. I don't want to deal with this. Can you manage it for me? I'm an agent. I don't want to do property management. Right? That's a whole nother world of legal pain, of liability. I don't want to deal with any of that. And oh, by the way, he wants to do short-term rentals, right?
Right.
I don't have a vacation rentals management business. I don't want to have anything to do with that. Can I just call you and say, hey, Rabbu, can you just come in and handle all that for me?
100%. And if we don't want to have a geographic presence there, and we need somebody that's on the ground, we can also have you work with somebody licensed their technology on the ground there as well. So we'll help you educate you and your client on the revenue opportunity. And then we can either do it for you, or if we don't want to enter that market for whatever reason, maybe we have a licensee who has a foothold there, we'll just refer you to the licensee who can execute upon it. So yes, very much so. That's really what you want to accomplish. And one thing I want to add to that, Rob, is that the one thing that we're kind of fighting for is to educate investors that this is a rental strategy, not just for vacation markets, that this can actually work in urban markets as well, because the demand for alternative lodging, alternative rentals is extremely prominent in urban markets as well, to the surprise of a lot of investors. So I do want to point that out because it's an interesting point that not a lot of people understand, is that, hey, I can buy a property because we're based in Charlotte, I can buy a property in Charlotte and I can have short-term tenants in there and I can get a 15% yield. Really? I thought I can only do this in the mountains or on the beach or on a ski resort. No, really, there's an opportunity to be able to do this in urban markets as well.
So talk to us a little bit about that, Emir. I'm really curious because, and I love this conversation for a couple of reasons, not just, through the lens of a great solution to the marketplace, but also through a bit of a personal lens. So just interestingly, I'm currently looking for alternative rentals. So I, would love an opportunity over the next year to, go and explore a few different geographies in Canada, unfortunately, which is not where you are, but still. And it's an interesting dynamic. It's an interesting marketplace out there to be able to find these type of short-term rentals. And when I talk about short-term rentals, I don't really want to look at Airbnb because of the additional fees, et cetera. They really seem geared for the, vacation kind of stays. So I am looking kind of for that short to medium term stay, 4 weeks to maybe 8 weeks, something like that. So talk to me a little bit about how you found yourself in this niche and where and how you've determined, like, who are those ideal people on the consuming side that are looking for properties in downtown Charlotte, North Carolina, or wherever. How did you discover that?
Yeah, so we discovered it. It's a great question, Lynette. I love that question. I think you kind of tell a story of before and after COVID. Really, I think you'll appreciate that as well. So we first discovered that there's a need for short-term rentals. In a city like Charlotte, which is not necessarily a vacation destination. Through that apartment above, that room above our garage that I mentioned earlier. And what we found out was we were in a part of town that was a nice, very, very nice neighborhood, but there's no lodging opportunities in that part of town, right? It wasn't in uptown or downtown Charlotte. So it was 5 miles out or something along those lines. So, people were coming to town. They didn't want to stay in downtown. They wanted to have a more local, authentic experience. So they would come stay in a Charlotte neighborhood, or they were visiting family that lived in the same neighborhood as we did, but they didn't have any additional room there. Or they were in town for work and they didn't want to stay in a hotel. They wanted to switch it up a little bit. So it's really, the use cases are really unique. And there's quite a few of them. We've seen a transition, when we first started, it was mostly younger people, people in their 20s and 30s. Now we have grandparents staying at our properties. So it's really been a transition over time and that was at first Airbnb tenants. And that's really what we were focused on primarily. And every now and then we would get, somebody would come in and stay for 30 days, but that would be like a one-off because, it's just, they needed a place for a month. So fast forward a little bit, and I hope this is answering your question. Fast forward a little bit to March of last year. So March of last year, we just right the weekend of St. Patty's Day of last year. I think it was like the weekend of March 13th and 14th. Airbnb, we're starting as a country. We started going on lockdown. Everybody is freaking out. Airbnb says, hey, if you have an Airbnb rented for the next 3 months, feel free to cancel it, full refund, right? So over that weekend of the 13th, 14th, the 15th, we saw easily 6 figures of cancellations come in. And while disappointed, we weren't upset. Like, we understood why, right? I mean, it was a pandemic. Nobody knew what was happening. Everything was so early. I mean, things are still kind of, nobody knows what's going on, but everything was so early. We're like, we get it. Like, you have to cancel it. So, as we started these reservations coming in, of course, we were freaking out. So we started thinking, okay, what can we do? What can we do? What can we do? So we decided to open up our calendars and purposefully start marketing our properties for monthly stays. Because our kind of theory at that point was, well, there's, and this is like when everything first started in New York. So we're thinking, okay, people are leaving New York City. New York City is not a great place to be right now because it's just, COVID was was reaching all kinds of records there. And the lifestyle there, if you can't be outside, just the homes in New York City especially are just, you're in small apartments. So we started, marketing our places to those type of tenants at significantly reduced rates, just trying to get heads in beds. And next thing we know, we have close to 100% occupancy across our portfolio, with people that on average were staying 28 days. We're like, oh wow, okay, this is interesting. And then that kept extending and extending and extending. So, what became apparent is that people realized work from home was here to stay, and they were not forced to be in a certain geographic area anymore, right? They didn't have to live in New York to work at a New York company. It sounds like similar to what you're thinking about right now with exploring different areas. So people said, they became nomads. They said, okay, well, I'm going to go live in Charlotte for a couple of months, and I'm going to go to Nashville, and I'm going to go to Miami, Florida, or wherever else the case may be. And they had very few options from a supply perspective of where to stay. A traditional multifamily apartment is not going to allow anything less than 6 months. They don't want to buy anything. They don't have furniture. So our type of product became the best option for them. So we started marketing those tenants to book directly with us. So we skipped, while we still market them on Airbnb, we push for most of those tenants to come directly through our website and book directly on our platform. So, and that's honestly continued since through now. We are seeing a huge spike in travel demand again, but in certain markets like Richmond, Virginia, our average stay is still about 30 days. While I'm in Miami right now, the average stay here is 2 days. So it's really, it's unique based on the local circumstances and the demand in the marketplace.
Awesome. Thank you.
God, Emir let's make this 3 hours.
I got no end time.
Awesome time.
Yeah, I got no end time.
I get to 3 hours.
I got time. Yep.
So, Emir, I want to go back to kind of a question I asked before, which was about your tech platform and how you draw in all these different things into your platform, right? So my question is like, it seems like there's somebody who, okay, so is there a risk of you being like good at a lot of things, but not being really good at anything? You know what I mean? Like, I could imagine some service that's really good at marketing, or some service that's really good at customer engagement. And, what's the benefit? Like, are you better than these other guys? Like, with your small team, I don't even know your team size, but I could imagine somebody who just does, let's say, marketing engagement being better, right? Can you kind of speak to that? And then, and relatedly, what's the plus benefit we're getting from the integration? I know you said there's a benefit, but I'd love to hear kind of how that connects,
Yeah. Yeah, great question. And that's probably, one of the things that I'm most concerned about is that we are taking on a lot.
That's a lot. It's like
it is transparently, it's a lot. But my response to that is, yes, of course, that there will be solutions out there that are going to be better at marketing than us, than what we do, and certain things here and there. But unfortunately, right now, those are extremely siloed, and they're not connected to much of anything else. So you could be really good at marketing, your operations could be falling apart, or you could have security issues at the property. You wouldn't know how to underwrite properties appropriately. So we are looking at ways to improve that, and we plan to improve each individual piece. But you're right. I mean, it's a distinct risk that we are aware of, and it's something that by being good at a lot of things, and with the market so fragmented, we still possess the biggest advantage for you by being really good at a lot of things instead of just like unbelievably great at one thing, because we combine everything together into one. Otherwise, you're just you won't be able to execute as well.
It's easier,
yeah.
Right? I mean, that's
easier.
Yeah. So relatedly, then, because you guys are doing a lot of these things together, I'd love to hear, like, is there anything you've seen as, that this piece is more important than these other pieces, right? It's because you guys are doing like 8 different pieces or more, is there something you've discovered over time, maybe even data, to say, hey, like the security, it's not that big a deal. Like you don't have to care about it that much. Or maybe, hey, security really got to care, because every time you take a hit on this, that's like 2x cost or whatever. You know what I mean? So I can imagine there's like a portfolio, not a portfolio, but like a combination of a bunch of services? And is there any insight that you guys have? I mean, maybe this is like proprietary in-house, information that you guys have, but like where you say, hey, look, in the end, 80% of revenues come from, right? Or in the bump in margins come from better marketing or better customer service or so forth.
Yeah, it's marketing. It's really distribution and distribution in the marketplace. It's the most important thing. And bringing the calendars together and not having, this is industry term, but double bookings. Somebody booked your property on Airbnb and VRBO at the same time, then they show up. You have two tenants showing up at the property. That is extremely important. That's probably the most important piece in the equation when it comes to execution and revenue. Is being able to be on all the marketplaces. Pricing is important. As a business and from a growth perspective, the most important thing for us is the underwriting piece and helping investors understand the revenue potential for them. So at the end of the day, it's all about money. How much can they make, and then making sure you're on the right channels to make them the money. Everything else is really gravy on top, but also a huge operational advantage and scale advantage as well. Because without those things, without some of the operational efficiencies, some of the IoT technology, some of the accounting pieces, we would be spending a lot more time on mundane day-to-day tasks versus focusing on growth.
And so are you starting to get a sense then, Emir, of where in the context of scale and growth and you making money, right? And you mentioned earlier, how do you guys get a piece of that transactional component, right? So it seems to me that what brings people to your platform is the ability to extract additional rents, right? So what brings them there to begin with, right? Is it the fact that is the opco kind of your lead gen, and then you get them on the platform and now they're kind of hooked because you guys can give them all this data? Or at some point, will the opco become kind of redundant because you have this kind of technology? Because one is a much higher cost, I would assume, than the other. Yeah. And so in terms of an ROI, kind of to Albert's point, you spread yourself too thin, you're kind of not doing the best you can in any one of those places. But I totally get, from a starting point of view, there has to be, I guess I'm just curious, kind of where are you at from that lead gen place? How are you onboarding your clients?
Yeah, great question. I mean, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is we're trying to create a new asset class within real estate, and those are these shorter stays. So the ability for somebody to take a property and say, hey, I can make more money off this property by making a short-term rental. So the most important thing for us for that is really, again, goes back to the underwriting piece and educating the customers on how much money they can make. So that's really what we're focusing on. We just actually hired a new team member. He's a former Goldman Sachs investment analyst, and we've turned him into this product owner of this product, this educational procurement product, which we think we can monetize going forward. Beyond that, our goal is to not manage. Long-term goal is to not manage the properties ourselves directly, but to have other opcos license our technology to execute upon our strategy. That's where we want to get to. That's how we think we can create this asset class. We don't want to limit to our own internal operations. We want to give other opcos the clients through the underwriting tool, and then the operational expertise through the technology on how to serve these clients and kind of solve a little bit of that pain point that you alluded to earlier of being good at many things but not great at it. Kind of put it back on the individual operator to take our technology, which is good enough, and then step it up a level internally.
Awesome, great, thank you.
All right, so I realize we're getting really into some amazing conversation, and I realized I don't know even real basic shit, so I'm gonna ask the real dumb basic questions first, and then hopefully get into more depth. What's the cost? If I'm a homeowner and I want to use the what am I looking at paying?
Yeah, so it's a revenue share. So it's typically we get 25% of the revenue we generate for you, we keep for ourselves.
25%. So
correct.
The additional gain that you're talking about for the homeowner is taking that 25% into account?
Yeah, it's net of the 25%.
Net of the 25. Okay.
Correct.
If I'm an opco and I want to, like you said, license your technology, what's that cost?
It's about $75 per month per unit. Your door, as we call it in the industry.
Per door. Okay.
Yep.
All right. All right, and then the other questions, like when you guys are doing things like investment analysis and yield from etc., right? Are you
Yep.
taking local ordinances and local zoning issues into account? Because as you know, this is an area where there's a fair amount of political stuff.
Yeah, yeah, good question. Yes and no. In the automated tool, we don't have that fully fledged out yet. We're working on adding local zoning ordinances to that, but we do take into account HOAs, things of that nature, which can also be a limiting factor. The interesting thing, which helps us from a business perspective, most of the locations where short-term rentals produce the best yield are in markets with very few regulatory issues. So, it's not necessarily New York City. It's hard to buy an investment property in New York City or in San Francisco where there are stricter regulations against short-term rentals because the yield just isn't there. We've run plenty of analysis on San Francisco from investors that have asked us to. It's just you can't find yield there because the properties are, a 2-bedroom is $1.5 million. It's just there's no yield to be had. Those are just personal residences. In the South, Southeast, some Midwestern states, that's where the opportunity to unlock yield, is significant. And there's very few regulatory issues there. But it's definitely something that's in our roadmap. Zoning ordinances, are definitely something that our team is working on incorporating HOAs as well.
Okay, so then let me do the public policy question because again, this is not how I feel. I know this is a conversation topic that is really starting to happen, right? And even like mainstream media, and I just saw this thing. As you know, as we all know on this call, home prices are appreciating at a level that we've never seen. I think we're looking at 14 to 60% year-over-year increases. At the same time, salaries are not going up 14 to 16%. There's a fair amount of agita, if you will, around that, and people wondering how are young families ever supposed to buy a house? So one of the targets of this is, for now, I think limited to BlackRock and some of the institutional landlords, right? Invitation Homes, those guys. It seems to me though that we're going to see that sort of politics filter down to investors, period, right? Meaning, I can't buy one home and you bought 3, right? That sort of sentiment. Like, is that something you guys think about, worry about, as a risk for your business?
It's a risk. I mean, it's very much a risk. We think about it, not sure, I think it's going to be down to regional levels. I think the way we tried to combat that is by, being flexible in the rental types that we can offer as well, right? There's some homes that because of some local regulatory issues, we just market as midterm rentals only and are successful in doing so. I think I see a world where potentially, there's demand for even furnished long-term rentals where our platform can serve those. Because I think we're getting into a place where society is evolving and realizing there's less need for products, and they care more about flexibility and being able to live a free life, a more nomadic life. So it's definitely something to think about. I think it's honestly far off. I think something that's been talked about for decades, and it's a risk. But I just, I think there's always going to be markets and states and opportunities where a model like this will work. I mean, we've seen that even from such a thing as how lockdowns are handled. Every state is different and there's extremes on both ends. So I think we'll always be able, and investors will always be able to find the right opportunities for them. I think they'll probably just move elsewhere, if that makes sense.
Makes great sense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so shifting gears a little bit, and we can get back to this policy stuff, but I don't know.
Nobody likes that stuff.
No, it's just like I just had to.
I get it though.
No, I actually love learning about this. But so I don't want to put more on your plate. It seems like there's a lot on your plate. So my first question is actually just if you can tell us a little bit about your team, like how big it is, how it's divided. Actually, why don't you answer that question? And I'll ask my next one.
Yeah, so we are 13 team members. Primarily, we were all primarily based in Charlotte up until March of last year. It's mostly ops and technology on our end. Some support, but mostly ops and technology. We are now, right as the pandemic hit, we're at 8, so we've been able to add 5 team members over the last year or so. We are now more geographically dispersed. Myself, I'm actually in Miami for the next little while. We have 2 team members here. One that's working on a hotel that we're opening, and another's a former Airbnb employee. It was an early Airbnb employee number 13 that just joined in January as our chief growth officer. So we're in Miami.
Wow.
We have a team member in Minneapolis who's that Goldman Sachs analyst that I mentioned. We just onboarded a team member in Boston, Mass. Last week. She is in charge of our guest experience. She comes from a Brookfield and a Four Seasons background, Four Seasons hotels, resorts, and 3 engineers, 3 developers. So everybody else is mostly ops and on the ground support.
This
all
is
remote.
like the most exciting time ever, right? It's like you guys are right at that growth stage. So so that sounds awesome. I'm sure you've had this question, or you've had VCs ask you this question, investors ask you this question, but one thing that immediately pops to me is like kind of what's the edge of your ambition? So what are you thinking about kind of in the long term? And immediately, one thing that pops out is if you get this formula right, can you do this? Can you do the same thing for other assets, right? Not just homes, but cars and right? I don't know. Like you can imagine, hey, like I have something that's valuable. I never use it, or I don't use it. I have this like lawnmower that's awesome. This John Deere lawnmower. Can someone just like rent it out for me instead of me just sitting there? Like that seems like again.
Man,
so I'd love.
I was actually literally going to ask him, when will you do this for cars? Because
oh yeah,
Tesla that I want to rent out. Anyway, that's awesome.
So to answer that Tesla question, I actually myself utilize a service called Turo to rent out my Tesla and a couple other cars that I have, like in the sharing economy. Highly recommend Turo, Turo.com.
I think I might be talking to you after this is all done.
There you go.
Get some advice.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. It's a great platform. I recommend it. No, I mean, at this point, we have no ambitions to go anywhere else but to stay in real estate. And for right now, primarily residential real estate. It's the world's largest asset class. And we are right now primarily focused on helping unlock this asset class in the United States. But beyond that, I think the ambitious side is, I'm sure we can get into Canada, into the rest of North America, and strategically where it makes sense in probably South America first, and then Europe. So I think for the foreseeable future, we're going to stay in real estate, but that's a big market. That's a huge market. It's the world's largest asset class. So we're going to stay focused on real estate, but we really want to kind of be at the forefront of creating this new real estate asset class, this shorter stay asset class, which I think the demand is only blowing up, and it's something that COVID has accelerated. COVID has changed the way people live. They are no longer tied to one geographic location. And it's also changed the way people travel. Hotels are just not attractive anymore. People want full homes, they want privacy, they're more social distance friendly. And hotels have become a distressed asset, and people are now starting to buy hotels, distressed hotels, and turn them into micro apartments. So there's just so much opportunity in this just residential real estate space that I think if we focus on that, this can be, a unicorn many times over.
Awesome. Albert, are you good?
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to follow up with there? I just want to make sure that you had a chance to follow that through. So
I only have 30 more questions, but go ahead.
Here's the problem. We all have so many questions, and I'm sure that to a certain degree we bite our tongues because we're all very conversational. So it's like, and it's the next one.
And my company is fascinating.
And it's fascinating. Exactly.
I love this idea. This is great.
Thank you.
No, I have so many. I mean, I've been all over 100 different like websites and checking out different things, and like just during the course of this conversation, because it's, you have my wheels turning in a lot of different areas now, but back to the basics, like Rob said earlier. I'd love to know, so you guys have been around since what, 17, Emir?
Yep, correct.
Is that kind of when?
Yeah, that's quit NBC Sports in 2017 to start doing this full time. And then James, my co-founder, who was with me and at NBC, was doing that as a side hustle. And then he joined full time in 2018. And we raised some capital at that point, which is when, I've been doing it since 2017. James has been doing it as a side hustle. And then in 2018, after we raised some capital, he joined.
So that's exactly what I'd love to know. What have you guys raised for capital to this point? And I mean, Albert just pointed out the fact that you're kind of in this exciting growth phase and you're bringing on some team. You're starting to think about how to continue to expand across North America and potentially into some other global markets. So what have you raised? Where are you thinking of raising next? And, you know, what's kind of that trajectory? What's that roadmap look like for you guys?
Yeah, great question. So we raised a $1.5 million seedish round in September of 2018 to really invest more into the technology and into the business. So that was done by a small equity firm in Charlotte, North Carolina, and a handful of angels. And that $1.5 million really gave us about 18 months of runway. So at the beginning of last year, we went out to raise a $1 million note round, and raised $500,000 of that, and were then given a term sheet for an equity round by our venture capitalist group based out of Washington, D.C. We signed that term sheet on March 12th of last year, and timing wasn't ideal. I remember meeting with this VC. It was a good friend. We're still in touch. And he was basically saying all the things that we were hearing on TV is like, oh, COVID is not that dangerous. Give it a couple weeks, it'll pass through. The lockdowns will lift. We're all good. There's that theory that when it's summertime, the heat is gonna make it go away. All that stuff. All those things were thrown out, and we get it. Nobody knew what was happening.
Right.
Well, unfortunately, we know what happened. Right? COVID didn't go anywhere. Right? It stuck around. So. Unfortunately, that term sheet ended up falling through in October. The VC could just never get its partners on board to invest into a travel and real estate startup during the pandemic, which again I understand. I wasn't happy about. A little bit upset that they wouldn't take a bet on the team, but it's kind of what we talked about right before we started. They were transparent about it throughout the process, and that's all we can ask for, right? So. We ended up closing that note round after we found out from that venture capitalist group that they're not going to do it. We ended up closing that note round that we started. And I just started emailing investors this week about our next venture round. So we're actively going to go raise some capital now.
And what are you looking for?
5 million.
5 mil. And what's your because if there are any VCs listening to this, they're going to want to know this, right? What do you plan to do with $5 million, Amir?
Yeah, I mean, so we had our best month ever last month. We had 50% revenue jump last month, really kind of indication that like this travel demand is back. So that was big for us. We had a 50% revenue increase last month. And so this is all about hiring more sales and marketing resources and further investing into the technology. I think we can get a much bigger footprint out there. We just hired that new chief growth officer, was an earlier B&B employee. Had been there for the last 10 years, joined us in January. That was an investment that we made. We really want to kind of put fuel to the fire of really pushing towards more of these opportunities of identifying these large institutional real estate groups and partnering with them on converting their projects into primarily short and medium term units versus your traditional long-term units.
Amazing. Great.
I have a quick question that, again, we're getting into like the business stuff, but I want to know a little bit more about kind of your experience. So meaning, I know like in the startup, doing it's like 90% pain and like just doing a lot of, it just sucks most of the time and just putting out fires, but you have your high moments too, right? And I'd love to hear what you and your team, like what your high moments are. Like, when do you guys feel like this is awesome? Like we're doing stuff we want to do. I'd love to hear like the high moment, and on the flip side, I'd actually like to hear your low moment too. If you can just, whatever pops up in your mind.
Yeah, it's a good one, Albert. I mean, the most recent high moment was at the beginning of this month when we kind of got the final QuickBooks number that said that we had, we were outpacing our model by 20%, and that, we were 50% higher than any previous revenue month. That was, an incredible high. It was one of those things like, like we were, our industry and the market was beaten down over the last 12 to 18 months of everything that's going on with COVID. So that was an incredible high for the team. And then really any kind of product pieces, adding to new team members, just signs of progress we like to celebrate, because it's the little wins that add up over time. So those are always things that we celebrate as a team. Low moments, man. COVID was a low moment. I mean, I think that's kind of like everyone can say that. Other low moments is just when we have to deal with things that we shouldn't have to. When we know we could have done better and we didn't set something up appropriately, and then it rears its ugly head. Or when we know that a problem might happen, and we all are like this. We're trying to hustle. We're trying to push through. We ignore it, and then it occurs. The problem occurs. And like, yeah, I should have handled that earlier. Why did I do that? And now I'm wasting time. It's really, they're more like self-reflection than anything else, right? It's like, okay, I've done this better. I think that's where the low moments come in as a team. But overall, I mean, I think the best quality that, especially on the CEO side, that you can have is kind of emotional intelligence and staying calm, regardless through the thick and the thin. So that's what we kind of try to come, but we definitely want to celebrate as many little wins as possible.
I want to say that's like one immediate impression I get from your talking to you today is like, there's a term in Korean, but I don't know if it translates well in English, but we like cockroach founders, meaning like founders who can like last through a nuclear winter, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, or companies that have like, that don't die, even though it goes wrong. And so you guys, I mean, you personally have been through shit, but like you guys have also been through COVID, and in the middle of COVID, the chunk of it during your growth phase. So I'm incredibly impressed by that, and I think that's gonna pay off. You know what I mean? I love that. I love it. I love that you guys have been through so much shit.
Yeah,
I love
we talk about it. I'm glad you point that out. It's something we're incredibly proud of as a team. Regardless of what happens with the company, which I think we're on the right path and we're going to win. I think pushing through this last year is going to be one of the best, accomplishments that we're all going to have professionally to look back to over time. It's when character gets built. It's when companies really get built. And we had an unfortunate news last week that one of our team members was moving on to another company. We were her first job out of college, and she had been with us for 2 years. She had been exposed to everything. She was kind of like a jack of all trades. She was incredible, and she just decided to go elsewhere and just like do one single thing to focus on. She was ready for a change, and we celebrated her. I'm very happy for her. I'm gonna be a fan for life because she even told us when she gave us resignation, she's like, I learned so much going through this stuff with you guys last year. It's like the experience is immeasurable. So she's like, I'm thankful, and we're thankful for her. Hate to see her go, but we're gonna, it's formed a family going through tough times like this. So she's just moving on to bigger and better things for her, and we're excited for her. So yeah, 100% on the same page there. It's very proud of the last year.
That's very cool, Emir. And just to give you a little bit of context. So I know that Rob kind of positioned me as the VC, but really I lead a scale-up growth program for real estate technology companies. Mm-hmm. And so when we are evaluating companies to come into our program and to work with us in the context of scaling, right? We are really looking for, first and foremost, before we're looking at the solution, before we're looking at anything, from a financial perspective, is what's the DNA of this company? What is the DNA of the founder, the founding team? What's the DNA of the company? So I'd love to hear from you. I think, we've had an opportunity to get a really good feel for you, I think. And I think leadership always sort of sets that tone. But I'd love to hear from you in the context of, your company. How would you describe your company's DNA?
That's a good question. From a technical perspective, I think we're a very very technology, process, and operational heavy. That's kind of what we're really good at. We are not great, transparently. We're not great at marketing or branding necessarily. What we excel at is solving problems, understanding use cases, and solving those problems through technology. And I think that's why we quickly, early on, kind of gave up on creating the next hospitality brand because it's not in our nature. It's not in our DNA. So I think that's kind of from a skill set perspective, what are we good at? I think it's process, ops, and technology. On the kind of emotional, more mental level, it's just tough. and willing to do what it takes to win. I think the last year proved that is that, we'll get up if you get punched in the face. We'll get up and we'll fight back, and we'll figure out how to get a win out of this thing. So, yeah.
That's amazing. I love that. I mean, even just the way you articulated it, not only are you, kind of self-aware enough of what you guys are good at, you're self-aware enough to admit what you're not good at too, which is, really kind of it's a demonstration of the maturity of your company. So good on you. That's awesome.
Thank you.
So a couple more industry questions for me, and then I think I'm pretty much done. Other than when you launch your car version of this at some point.
Yeah.
You do the startup, Rob. Why did you do it?
Just like license Rabbu and then do Carbu.
And then do car.
Yeah.
Really awesome car rentals.
Really awesome.
Yeah, really awesome. Ravu.
So obviously in the property management space, you're competing against some established vendors, established tech companies that have been around for decades, and they have, I'm thinking like guys like Timberline and Yardi, or even Appfolio, or to some extent Zillow starting to have some of this, like you're in a niche, right? It's a very specialized niche. Are you guys integrating fully with all of those other platforms, or talk to me a little bit about that?
Good question. Those groups, the Yardis, the Appfolios, the Real Pages, they're just, we don't integrate with them. They are very much long-term rental focused. Our niche, is actually, Airbnb during their S1 when they filed it for their IPO. They identified that this is really like the short-term and medium-term rentals is a $2 trillion market. So it's a large niche, right? Those groups are not participating in it at all. And what we see now a lot on the ground is that, an owner that sees a multifamily property, for example, an owner that has Greystar or managed one of his multifamily buildings will come to us and say, hey, Greystar, has some vacancy that I need filled. Can you guys come in and work alongside Greystar to solve for this problem? We really, right now we're complementary. I'm sure as we start getting more kind of leverage and more headway with some of these bigger opportunities, I think we'll start working with Yardi and Appfolio. We've already enacted conversations with RealPage on that. So I think it will get there. We are integrated with Zillow, but that's because they're a marketplace for us, not a property management system. But I think a Yardi and Appfolio and a RealPage, I think they have a ways to go to even start considering the space because it's so much more intricate and detailed than your traditional long-term rentals. No,
I mean, I could see that as a potential exit path for you guys.
For sure.
But it does suggest, like, right now, to me, any sort of specialized niche kind of technology play has to have integration with larger platforms.
Right.
And if you're saying we're a platform, you're a platform for an Airbnb landlord. You're a platform for me, right? You're not a platform for a guy who manages 3,000 doors. But he could use your platform as a sub-platform. You know what I mean? So that means integration is something that has to happen. So that's one question. Yep. The other one really has to do with an area of the industry that I really specialize in, and I don't know that I see a whole lot of connection, but I'm just curious, like multiple listing services. Do you guys have anything to do with them? Would you like to have anything to do with them?
We are playing around with an opportunity to take any property that's listed on MLS and automatically underwrite it for yield with our tool. We've been able to do that through some backend ways, and we plan to expand upon that going forward. But we've done that. We don't have the proper connections to MLS yet to be able to execute upon that yet fully. But that's in our pipeline as well on the kind of on the underwriting side, where you can give us an address and tell you how much you can make, or we can show you how much a property that's on the market right now would generate from a yield perspective.
How far along are you on the technology development side? Because I could probably connect you to some MLS.
If you have the connections, I mean, we've had the trial version of that running by connecting through the leads or the units. By indirectly connecting to MLS, we've been able to do it, but it's just not a scalable way to do to execute. So yes, absolutely could if you have the data. Yeah.
All you need is the listing data, right?
Right.
That's all you need is the listing data.
Right. Because I mean, yeah, we can run it through our tool very quickly.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
I love it. I love it.
I have one last question, and then we're already an hour and a half in. But I have one last question, and then we can. Yeah. So you've been touching on this a little bit throughout, but I'd love to hear if there's more to your data story. So I know data is like whatever, we talk about data all the time, but you talked about kind of you guys have a better view on the price, right, of rentals. So I see that as part of the. Is there more that you guys are hungry for? Is there more data out there where you can really protect your business, be proprietary, add more value? Is there kind of a story there that you guys are working on internally, or is that something that you just need more kind of scale and more data points and more of that flow to get working? I'd love to hear your thought process.
Yeah, I mean, we are storing and collecting as much data as possible. Performance data, historical data, yield data from platforms, from geographic locations, even some like tenancy data, how long tenants are staying, how long ahead of time they book, how long a typical stay is. All those things, we are capturing that and storing that in our database, and we have a business intelligence tool that we utilize to kind of give ourselves an advantage there. But yeah, we could be doing more with that, Albert. We just haven't had the opportunity or haven't had the resources.
You guys are already doing a lot.
Yeah, right. But we are storing it purposefully so that we can have that data and can utilize it elsewhere going forward.
Okay.
Okay, if you gentlemen will give me the latitude to ask the last question.
All you.
What are you, Emir, most excited about? Where's your biggest opportunity for 2021? The rest of 2021.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm really excited about is that, vaccine distribution, honestly. I think there's so much pent-up travel demand that the floodgates have started opening, and they're going to open some more. And I think the supply of homes is gonna be limited for travelers, and I think more investors are going to realize that they need to take their product, their rental properties, and utilize better strategies for it to really capture the demand and the yield that's going to be in the marketplace. So I think this is going to be one of those kind of momentum building years for the industry in general, where they realize that, oh man, like this thing is more than just like an Airbnb or this place I can stay at for a couple of days because I don't want to stay in a hotel. This is turning into a lifestyle, and I think that's going to be one of the big takeaways from COVID is that people are going to realize that they can work from anywhere. They're not tied to a geographic location. They don't need to stay in a small hotel room. So that just creates so much opportunity for people to live the life they want to live, and the industry that's going to have to catch up to that is real estate. And I think we're going to see some of those shifts, tectonic shifts, really in property investors understanding the opportunity set this year. That's going to be driven by vaccine distribution.
Totally. Love it. Thank you.
All right.
It's been great.
All right. Well, like I said, we could probably keep going, but if anyone's been watching for an hour, this is 90 minutes long. So for the I don't know, the 5 or 6 people watching, thank you very much. You are free to comment and ask questions of Emir or of us as well, but that's for future reference. Emir, thank you so very much for joining us. I love the concept. Like I said, let's make sure we get in touch, because I think at least I could certainly introduce some MLSs and
that would be great.
Some doors, and it'll be really fun. And I do think that there's a real use case for what you guys are doing, in the industry right now. So this was really, really great.
Awesome.
Yeah,
it's
thanks.
a pleasure, guys. Thank you. Thank you so much.
This is the part where we kick you out, Emir, and then we're going to behind your back.
Talk smack about me.
Shit about you. That's right.
We're gonna say what we really feel. But I was just so impressed. I'm so impressed, and
thank you, guys.
Love it.
Yeah, best of luck.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Pleasure meeting you guys. I enjoyed it. Thanks again for the opportunity. And sure, our paths will cross soon. Take
Absolutely.
care.
Sounds great. Thanks, Emir.
Go Rabbu.
All right. That was awesome.
Cool.
So,
Hey,
now we're
Drew.
joined by Drew Myers.
Hey
So
there.
we could talk shit
How
about
are you
Emir and
guys?
Rabbu.
No shit, man. Just good
No,
vibes.
it's gonna be all good.
So, I just
Yeah,
want to
there's-
start off. Can I just start off real quick? Like this founders is really, I mean, just really good.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It just comes through. It just comes through. Like, and so I'm just so impressed. Like,
Yeah.
of course, founders are pretty amazing people in general, but just, you know, you can see this guy knows how to execute. Do you know what I mean? You can see that this guy knows how to like grind in and like
But
produce
they've all been
results.
so far, right? I mean,
They all
they've
are, but
been. We've
again-
been very lucky that way, you know.
And yeah, but you know, again, I want to say that this guy feels extra special to me. You know what I
Well,
mean?
that's why I said look at his biography, right? I mean, he's got some miles in terms of a history of having to be pretty awesome, right? And come through some stuff. And what I love about him though is just his, you know, and you hit it, like he's just so calm. Like he has this emotional intelligence around kind of wanting to kill it, but at the same time, just knowing he has to be really, you know, calm about it, right? He's not out there to try and prove anything. He's just doing good stuff. He's cool. I like him.
Yeah. I mean, again, I've met so many founders in my life, and everyone has different strengths and weaknesses. But what I'm saying is, like, according to what these guys have to do and what their service is, he's just like the perfect like leader for that. You know what I mean? Like, if this was a different type of service, you don't want necessarily somebody who's kind of like that. But just so impressed, man. I just so impressed by this founder. Really, like top 10 in my life, probably. So
Well, all right.
That's
Yeah.
bold words. I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk shit about it. No, not shit about it. Let's just talk about him. What did you like most? I mean, so it's Drew. I mean, you start. You know, you've been following these guys longer. Like, what do you like about Rabu? What do you not like? And what do you think their strengths, weaknesses, all that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I was actually originally introduced to Emir by Courtney Cooper, who was a VC at Latte Partners up in Toronto. And I think that was probably 6-7 months ago, perhaps. But I mean, I've been my last startup was kind of in the startup or in the short-term rental space. So I've kind of followed that sector more closely than most people have, who come from kind of the real estate industry lens. And I've been hugely bullish on the entire, what I call landlord tech or property management software kind of sector as a whole. I think that's where there's going to be some massive winners in that in the coming kind of decade, I'd say. And I think the unique thing that I was attracted to when I first talked to him was, I mean, yes, he's super impressive and kind of even keeled. I think the mix of kind of advertising properties and kind of utilizing an asset across short-term, mid-term, and long-term, that's the future of all of property management to me. I no longer think, or I don't think that the kind of property managers are going to just rent out long-term or rent out short-term. They're going to just do whatever makes the most money, regardless of kind of what that looks like. And I think so he's on the cutting edge of that earlier. I mean, there's some people out there, kind of individual property managers that kind of have been doing that for a while, organically, just in their own small 10, 20, 100 door type approach. But this is the first kind of tech approach I've seen to really capitalize on that trend. So that was the initial draw for me, is like, that's the future of the asset class to me.
Hi. What do you not like about him?
It came up in the interview as far as they're trying to do a lot. Like I think the whole management side is one thing, and the actual kind of marketing side is another thing. Like, for a small team, I mean, 13 people is still a small team in the grand scheme of things, right? Like, this is not a Airbnb or Zillow type company that you can throw a couple hundred employees at something and go kind of figure it out. So I think they're going to be strapped to kind of actually execute well across the entire, because it's a complex offering, right? Like, you've got to do a lot of things. And I do worry. I'm actually in a VRBO rental in Carlsbad right now for a couple months, and I worry about the virtual nature. And like, that's been cemented in this. We've been here 3 weeks. the property manager is in North Carolina. Like she's never been in the house or hasn't been since she moved there a couple years ago, and it's been a nightmare, frankly. Like she needs to just come to the property, she like fix stuff, get stuff done, and like none of that has happened. And she would just know all this if she was in the area and had at least visited the property once every 6 months, right? But it's just been a sorely neglected thing, and I feel like we're just the buildup, and like 3 or 4 things have all gone wrong, and the property manager, to me, has done basically nothing. So I'm not saying that Rabbu is going to do that same thing. Like I don't think she's a great property manager to begin with, but like that's a worry long term on the model from my perspective. I think it's one thing to license it out to local providers. Like that alleviates that need if you have people in market doing the work and they're just the tech behind the scenes and kind of facilitate some of the concierge offerings and the consumer experience, et cetera. But the actual operations, you can't do everything from afar. You need someone on the ground to come open the door, get in the garage, let the technician in. So
we're seeing that in some other models, right? Like, like Picasso's come to market. It's what they've done, right? They've partnered really closely in every local geography to have an operator, so that concierge service is front and foremost. I also wonder if, like, from my perspective, a couple of things that didn't come through, and we didn't really poke at it, but I think it came through in the conversation. I'm not certain how well, and he kind of said it when he identified what they're good at, what they're not good at. I don't know how well they know the industry, how well they know the space, right? Like they've had experience owning their own property. They've definitely been able to sell their services on the technology side to some other property owners, but how well do they know the larger macroeconomic ecosystem of the $1 trillion asset class that they're trying to approach? And I think that could be wildly beneficial to helping them focus on, what their UVP really is in this marketplace. Because I think that's the other part that they don't seem to be really clear about. What is their UVP? I mean, he's alluded to the fact that the travel floodgates are going to open. Drew, you raise a whole host of issues that I think property owners are going to have to face as, if their kind of assumptions around how people are going to start to move and travel and work come through. Like, to me, they're in the perfect position to get ahead of all of that and really define that unique value proposition, right? And I'm not certain they're quite there yet. Like, they know it's coming, but I don't, and maybe he was just being coy on the call and not, and you don't want to share all of your kind of secrets in a call like this. But again, I think that's a challenge that they have an opportunity for. I'm just not sure they're ready yet. And I'm not certain they understand or have a really great grasp of the marketplace to be able to define that.
Cool. I mean, I think for me, it does come down to a policy thing. Because I love the company. I love, like I said, man, I'm about to be like a cabin owner in Utah. I think
you're about to be a customer of Ravu.
I'm about to be a customer. So I love that, right? And the whole, Airbnb short-term rental, it's something that a lot of folks are really, really interested in. I get it. Thing is, the short-term rentals, mid-term rentals, whatever you want to call it, I mean, right now there's enormous regulatory risk.
Totally.
And that's not necessarily his problem. You know what I mean? It's not Rabu causing it. It's not Emir causing it. It's local communities saying we don't want short-term rentals. There's massive fights about it. Realtor associations are constantly involved in that sort of thing, right? So I do think that that's one issue. And the other one that he kind of sort of said, I asked him straight up, and he was just like, I just don't really see it happening. Investment property here to last. One of the reasons I wanted Pedro on this is because he and I have been talking about this now for a couple of months, that the notion that home ownership, American dream, is dying for younger people, I think is real. And I just wonder, like, what does that look like? Because especially short term, when he talks about, I want to go into the MLS and put yield numbers next to every listing, right? And I'm like, okay, now the issue is now you're really removing housing stock. Now you can't buy a house, and you can't even do a long-term rental on a house anymore because the landlord is going to make more money by turning into shorter mid-term rental. Okay, well, now what are you supposed to do? Do you know what I mean? Like, unless this is accompanied by just massive building of housing units across the board, which none of us control, it just, I feel like it raises a political problem for them. And again, this is not something they could do anything about, but I don't know what you think about that.
Like, let's hope they run into that problem. You know what I mean? If they scale it out enough so that's the extent of it, then that's
That's a very good point.
But let me ask you this, Rob. Like, regardless if you have a solution like Rabbu integrated into the MLS that allows that, would you argue that that's not already happening? I mean, like you and I talked a little bit about this in previous conversations too, but the fact that during COVID, where you've got, all of this massive currency being printed, and yet you see the escalation of home prices, right? Where's that money being dumped? It's being dumped into hard assets somewhere, likely property, right? That's not because every homeowner has taken their government support check, or every person that's received a government support check is out on the market buying a new home. That's people who already had cash that are trying to assetize it somewhere, right? That's what they're doing, and they're doing it through the housing market. And so, I don't know. Like, I actually wonder if there isn't more of an opportunity. And what I loved about him, and we didn't talk about it enough, is he focused on it a lot at the beginning, was around education. And I think a lot of homeowners don't understand the financial asset they already have, right? Mm-hmm. And so, regardless or not, if you have a Rabbu, and I think Rabbu could help this, people that the average person that already owns a home, or maybe a home or two, help them kind of leverage that cash flow out of those assets a little bit better. And I wonder if that doesn't start to generate a little bit more economic currency through these types of models, and through integration with an MLS where you can use it as a bit of an educational component as well. I mean, that's altruistic. I'm super altruistic around this stuff.
You are super altruistic, and Albert is super right. But I want to put Pedro, our resident millennial, kind of on the spot here. Like, you've heard all this. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, my first thought was it's the opposite of WeWork, but they actually have the math, so it works. Instead of buying super long-term arbitrage leases or signing super long-term arbitrage leases, it's the short term, but they actually know that they can make money off of the deal. So that's the first thing that came to mind, which is that not really a helpful comment. But the thing that I thought was interesting was he said marketing was one of the most important things, and he seems to be a much more analytical mind. Really understands how the math works, the ins and outs of where they can make percentages on particular deals, but they're trying to raise money to hire out their sales and marketing team. And from my perspective, I think that is probably, at least from my limited understanding, going to be the thing that really enables them to scale or not. And if they can leverage, one thing that I heard that I liked was an educational component. If they can leverage the educational component to not just providing, maybe they don't want to do that because they have copyrighted or they have patents on their software, but if they can sort of leverage hey, here's how we're actually breaking down the analysis to help you understand how you can maximize your yield on the short-term deal, then people, oh, okay, interesting, Rabu, and then 6 months to 18 months, 6 to 12 months from now, every millennials and basically anybody who's trying to, people start thinking of Rabu in addition, alongside, oh, I'm going to Airbnb my property because that's how I can make a ton of money over the short term. That's where my head's at. I thought he was incredibly impressive. The people who he mentioned that they were hiring, the way he was talking about his employees, was all indicated to me that he was, no BS, but at the same time really actually did care, which is not a lot of times. You'd like to think that everybody's like that, but that's not the case, as I'm sure everybody here knows. And then, so yeah, extremely impressive. Very interesting in terms of, hearing the words arbitrage and real estate alongside one another and actually believing it. And then, yeah, I'd be curious to see how they market it.
So just to kind of latch on a little bit to what Pedro was saying, and again, coming from a non-real estate background, like I just look at this, the problem that they're trying to solve. Like I'm surprised there isn't like a million Rabus right now.
There are a few. I mean, like they're all a little bit different, but like Knox Financial or Dorstead would be some examples of companies that are in a similar vein.
Mhm.
Yeah. So it's, to me, the pain point that he's talking about is there's an opportunity there. You know what I mean? The fact that there is competition, there are companies, that's a really good sign, right? So what I mean is, what I'm looking at it is like, let's say I just have a house or like I have a room, right? And I know I could rent it out sort of. I don't really know, but it's a pain. Like, I don't really know. I'm like, maybe I'm just sitting at home, right? And I want to activate it. And if somebody can come to me and be like, hey, here's it's easy. You'll make some money off of it. We'll take care of all the pain points. Like that to me is like, if that's not being served, it should be served, right? And the total addressable market is way bigger. It's huge. It's incredible.
Can I jump in on that really fast? I think the long-term trend, the other big trend I see happening here is the real estate agents becoming wealth managers over time. And I think like a great example of a use case for them would be, I think they should be working with Zavi, and like Zavi's platform should not only show them what to sell it for, bridge it for, but they should also show what you could get as a rental. And like, yes, there's some incentives to work out on the agent side, because the agent obviously doesn't want them to do that because they're not going to make any money on that, or they're not going to make as much money as a $50,000 commission check. But that's in the best interest of the consumer. It might not be to sell the property.
I mean, look, I think, in my mind, the alliance that makes perfect sense right off the bat is, because I've been telling this to some of my brokerage clients, right? You should start property management. It's just very few of them want to, because it's such a pain in the ass, and there's so much liability, right? And it's not something you can really do as a 1099. You actually have to hire property managers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I get that, but I know of several examples of brokerages and teams that started out with property management and then use that as a lead funnel into real estate brokerage. It makes perfect sense. The issue is, and that's why I was asking him about, is this a turnkey, right? If I'm a broker and I called you and I said, I want to start a property management division, can you come in and just take care of it for me, right? If they could do that and then have the MLS integration, dude, this could actually be pretty significant. Like I said, my issue with them had nothing to do with them. It had to do with the overall society, which, who the hell knows?
Well, I think we're seeing more of these though, right, Rob? Like we're seeing more of these types of models pop up where it is sort of trying to, right now as a society, it's a buy or a lease, right? You buy a property or you rent property. I think we're starting to see a lot of these different models come up the middle around what's that straddle, right? And like, I even think about this if I'm a property owner, if I want to buy a home and I want to travel, I mean, why wouldn't I find some model to make that asset work for me? And a Rabbu would be perfect. I buy a home, I live in it for a couple of months of the year. And other than that, I have Rabbu manage it while I'm off enjoying myself. And, that income is supporting my travel habit or whatever that looks like. Right. So, I think I love it. I love all of these types of models because I think, they do kind of create this ultimate flexibility and a lot, both from a financial point of view, but also just from a societal point of view. I think, to your point, though, there are some structures that we have that we need to think about how they best fit so that we're maximizing that value. And I would agree, like brokerage is interesting, but that's a hard nut to crack in terms of how they're already structured, the liability pieces, et cetera. So
correct.
Lynette, you just described half of Picasso, but I think there is another version of Picasso. I'm not saying it's coming under the Picasso brand, but like I think someone will figure out exactly what you just mentioned in terms of enabling someone to kind of partner with a Rabbu type company, and like that person manages it as the home manager kind of throughout the year. And like if they're gone for 3 or 4 months, that Rabbu just instantly puts that on the market, monetize it, etc. But there are some challenges with that in terms of just people are particular about their homes, and some like this house it's a 4-bedroom house. The garage is locked. There's 1 bedroom locked. There's like 3 closets locked. So like you can do that, right? But it's not as turnkey as like there's a little bit of work involved to kind of turn over that sort of property.
Yeah. I think, again, we're not quite there, but it feels
Yeah.
like we're kind of on the cusp.
Yeah. All right. Let's wrap up. I'm going to start with Lynette because you're talking. One
Look,
final
I've
thought.
like really ratcheted myself, you guys, from like episode 1 to episode 3. It's like I'm bleeding. My tongue is bleeding, but no, I'm just kidding. Love these guys, Drew. You know, I love that you are picking these companies and sharing these companies with us that are slightly outside of the norm because they are interesting to talk to. They're trying to solve interesting products. I love that, like, that these guys in particular don't quite yet have it all figured out and yet are doing pretty well. Like, that's what I actually really like about them. I'm excited to see kind of where they go next. It sounds like they're really set up to take that next level leap, right? They've hired some great talent. You know, they're in a race to really focus in on what they know they're not great at. So I'm excited to see where they go. And I'm mostly excited to see how Rob makes out when he gets his property working with Ravu.
All right, Albert.
Yeah, I love these guys. I do. I love the founder. And let me tell you what I love. And what I meant, just to be clear, I feel like this is the right founder for this team. And what I mean is, the problem is, like, to me, obvious that they're trying to solve. I think the opportunity is pretty obvious. I think there's going to be a lot of competition. There's already a lot of disparate competition. So what I feel like is really important for this kind of startup is execution. It's not like they're coming up with incredible new ideas or a totally revolutionary way of doing things or using tech in such a way to create value that was never there before. What they're doing is, to me, wrapping up a lot of the messy stuff, making it really simple, and then creating value on top of that. Really clear revenue plan, right? Business plan, really clear, like, who the customer base is. Like, there's a lot of clarity here. So it's about, like, how awesome am I at doing whatever. And so I'm going to go back and that's why I like this founder, because this guy seems like he can bang out execution, that he'll be bumping heads, they'll be bumping heads, but find a way, right? Like, living through COVID, no money, that's like no joke for a travel startup.
Totally.
A team together, getting hires. I mean, getting that done, that's amazing. Like, we can talk about that as if, like, that's cool. No, that's amazing. So that's why it's about execution. And would you bet on somebody like this? I would, right? So so that's I would say I love that. And relatedly is back to what Lynette was saying. What I was saying is, you know, they got to figure out their focus too, right? They can't do everything. So they got to figure out what's going to be their spear to break through, to get to BEP, to get to these, right? To get to these points where now they can start, you know, banging stuff out. The only problem is they're facing so much pressure, like all startups are, right? To do so many different things too, right? And there's probably some investor who says, we'd like to see this aspect. And so he has to write it into his business plan. And so, you know, if they can kind of figure out what it is what the killer is going to be in this market, right? And execute on it. Yeah, I think it's fantastic. Really, it makes so much sense to me. So I'm not just saying it like blah, blah, blah. Like, I'd put money into these guys if I had some. So that would be my thought on them.
Drew.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I think at a high level, it's twofold. It's that they're hitting on two massive trends, which I see as inevitable. One would be the assets being utilized and kind of optimized across every asset or every type of rental. And then the second would be that kind of helping agents and brokers become wealth managers over time. I think that's something, like, I think the agents that frankly don't figure that out in the next 5 or 10 years are really, really screwed career-wise.
All right. I think, yeah, I echo everybody's thoughts on this. Love the company, but I think what I love most about them is kind of what Albert said, right? They're really solving a pain point for the consumer. And like I said, me, right? Like, I'm about to have a cabin, you know, we're not going to be there the whole time. Man, if this was a turnkey, easy, simple, you know, and well executed thing, like Albert said, then yeah, it's a no brainer. You know, it almost feels a little bit like the first time I heard about iBuyer, right? Where it's like, okay, there's lots of details, it's really complicated, and there's lots of pitfalls. Yeah. But fundamentally, there's this massive consumer pain, and you're addressing it. If you can do that, they're gonna win it. You know, it's a winner in my opinion.
Especially as millennials, as house prices keep going up and building wealth is becoming more and more. You have to own assets if you want to actually build wealth. You can't just make a salary anymore.
Okay, well, I've got a hot. My technician is here.
Bye, Drew.
All right, bye.
See you, Drew.
Yeah, that's the last thing. It's just from my perspective and my friends and millennials, you know, a 30-year paying $100K over asking for to then have a 30-year mortgage on a house that you're not 100% sure you love, but then seeing the flip side and being like, well, if I don't buy a house, then I'm just throwing money down the drain even more. What's the option? That Ravu can come in and be like, hey, we can actually help you make more money. Much more quickly, and we'll do all that work for you. That's
Pedro, would you use these guys? Actually, this would be the perfect closing. Would you use them, and what would you most want from them to use them, right? And you know, just off the top of your head.
Well, I'll put it this way. I actually was looking at some houses in the Vegas area by Red Rock, just to mess around, and I think. Yeah, I know, right? I think they have to figure out the project management piece because that's a big thing from my perspective. But I would 100% use them to sort of have a low lift, low headache a partner to do all of the analysis to help me just feel more comfortable about how I can actually make sure I'm not getting screwed or make as much money as possible, considering that like I anticipate for the rest of at least my career, not really knowing what I'm going to do every 2 years, you know? So why would I sign a 30-year fixed and pay $40K above asking just to be able to get the house when I know I'm probably going to be switching my jobs in 2 years. And you know, that's a kind of a no-brainer in my mind, but you know, and then I've already said this, but at the same time, you know, you have to own stocks, a house, some asset that will appreciate if you want to build real wealth these days, because everything's just so expensive. And so it does make that decision a lot easier.
All right, guys, we were 2 hours, minute, and 49 seconds through this. Thank you all so much. All right, we got another one in the bag.
Amazing. Good job, guys.
All right,
Nice.
thanks everybody.
Good job.
Great stuff.
Really enjoyed it.
Bye, y'all.